Hello and welcome to Reaching for the Moon, presented by Everglades Moon Local Council, Florida chapter of Covenant of the Goddess. COG supports individual works by its covens, members, and local councils. It's a vibrant network of a myriad of Wiccan and witchy resources, religious support, friendships, service opportunities, and more. To find out more, visit our website, emlc.net, our Facebook page, facebook.com/EvergladesMoon, or Twitter, @EMLCTweets.
Hello and welcome to episode 31 for Ostara 2017. I'm Lady Bridget, and we've got a great show for you this episode. We're going to have an interview with Spelcastor, how to incorporate your coven. He talks all about how to turn any group into a 501c. Then I will bring you some ideas about Ostara myths. I'm still working on the name for that particular segment, so if you come up with a cool name, something funny, then please email me and let me know, because I haven't come up with anything really cute at this point. And then we'll also have Lord Riekin's It'll Grow on You. He teaches us all about spring cutting. We will have music, and as I've been requested to introduce the music when the music happens, I'm going to introduce right now the first song that we're going to hear, and that's Queen of Spring. And it's one of mine from my album In Her Sacred Space, and I hope you enjoy it.
Every Queen of Spring, dance with us around the ring, mate with Pan, your horned king, all through the night. Hail Pan, horned one, god of greenwood and bright sun, frolicking the dark of night by her light. We hear your witches serve, worship you as you deserve, weave a web of strength and might, practice your right. By your love so dear, we progress throughout the year, take away our mortal fear, give us the sight. Hail, breed, Queen of Spring, dance with us around the ring, mate with Pan, your horned king, all through the night.
So this is Lady Bridget, and I'm here with
Spelcastor,
formerly of the Copsu Church, right?
Right.
You're still a member, though.
I'm still a member.
You're just no longer in charge.
It's hard.
It's hard not to be in charge?
I know it's hard. It's a lesson. Goddess is teaching me. Shut up. Go be the quiet elder in the corner.
Oh, and let other people take over. And that can be difficult, yeah.
But
yeah.
It's
good.
Working, and that's necessary.
And they're doing a great job.
They're doing great.
Yeah.
Right. It's about time they got rid of that crazy old guy and got some young blood in. Love it.
But you have a lot of experience with nonprofits and
yes.
501c organizations.
Yes.
And that's why I asked you to give us a little information about what a 501c is and why you would want to make yourself one, etc. So I'm going to let you take over.
Okay. So it starts when you find yourself running around signing legal documents. It's sort of like being a high priestess and someone says, I want a legal wedding, and you go, oh? And got to go find out now what.
Right.
So it's similar to that.
Right.
So now that you're signing stuff, you or me would like a little protection from me and some involvement of others and to be taken seriously by the rest of the world. The big kids and the muggles.
So you mean like if you're putting on an event.
Right.
And so you're signing contracts with the park.
Right.
Or you have to buy event insurance.
Right.
Things like that.
Right. And the business world is very used to dealing with corporations.
They are.
For profit or not. If you're a corporation, they think you're one of the gang.
Right.
We know how to deal with you. If you're a guy and your title is Grand Wizard, they're going to worry. It's just going to be hard.
They might even increase the price.
They might increase the price or run the other way.
Yeah.
So it looks good to be a corporation and probably a not-for-profit corporation. And you can do that. You go file papers in Florida, the state of Florida. You need at least 2 people on your board. Cannot be just Spellcaster.
So you
unlimited.
need 3 total.
Minimum.
Yourself and two other people.
Two other people.
Uh-huh.
They don't like spouse teams.
Oh, they don't?
Well, a third one. Got to have a third one in there.
Oh, I see.
And when you're dealing with the IRS and the feds, they like 4 or 6. It looks better.
I see.
Now, you can be charismatic and control them all. But but they're more comfy, see. 6.
Can they be all relatives?
Yes, that doesn't matter so much.
Right.
The more distance it looks, that you have a real functional board, a council, we know about councils, leading it, who are not all in bed with each other.
Right.
So they're used to seeing that, and you would do a not-for-profit corporation. And to file for one of those, I should have looked. It's $61.25 to renew a nonprofit. Whether it costs that or a little more to file one, I forgot to look. In Florida, sunbiz.org has all of that stuff.
Sunbiz.org.
Right.
Cool.
With this stuff, you sort of need to know what you're doing.
Okay.
You don't necessarily need an attorney, but you got to know what you're doing, because you are birthing a unnatural person and turning it loose in the world.
Right. So do you have to have like a tax ID number first?
First you get the corporation.
Oh, okay.
Then the feds will give you a tax ID number.
I see.
The state will insist you have a tax ID number. Everyone wants you to have a tax ID number.
Right. But if you're nonprofit, because I've dealt with this with COG, if you're nonprofit and you have a tax ID number, you can file to be exempt from state sales tax. And then when you do rent things or put on an event, you don't get charged the sales tax, which in our state is like 6%, 7%, depending on the area.
Sales tax is state and IRS is federal. 2 different covens, 2 different umpires.
Right, right.
So when you start as a nonprofit, and then there is this question of being recognized as a 501(c) organization or charity.
Uh-huh.
That is your first degree initiation by the High Coven of the IRS.
Uh-huh. The IRS scares a lot of people.
Right. So
Me included.
People do not mess with the High Coven.
This is true.
And so when I come around and say, hi, I'm Spelcastor of Spelcastor.org, they will ask, has the High Coven of the IRS blessed you or not?
Okay.
That covers their tushy, because they know the IRS is meaner than they are. So it's an initiation. Mm-hmm. It's fun to use common words for corporate stuff. So the 501(c) is first an initiation into the club of nonprofits, of serious nonprofits.
Okay.
You can run around it. You can do it never, and if you never make more than $25,000, life is simple.
In a year?
In a year.
Oh, yeah, that's easy.
Yeah, that's easy. But if you're going to bring in $500,000, people will wake up.
Right.
So you've gone and got your initiation from the High Coven of IRS as a 501(c). Mm-hmm. Now they have a choice with that. After that, they can recognize you as a church or not.
Okay, so what would be the differences?
Church and state is a wonderful thing. Watch what it does. It's wonderful what it does in the law. The IRS cannot say you're a church. They can say we recognize you as a church. Uh-huh. They say you walk like a duck and you quack like a duck.
Right.
We will consider you a duck.
Right.
Stop quacking, stop walking. We will rethink that.
I see.
So to get that 501(c) designation, you make a lengthy application which explains your vision and all the supporting documents of show us you are doing what you say.
Okay.
Really, it's an essay. It starts with an essay test, and then you surround it with programs and financial data, and everything points back to the essay, and it all comes together. Yes, we do this. See, here we bought the stuff to do it with. Here's the program. Here's the advertising. This is what we do.
So, like, if you were a coven and you were putting on, say, Sabbats.
Yes.
At a local park.
Right.
And you were purchasing event insurance, and you were charging admission, or charging potluck or whatever, and you were, what other things would they be looking for you to do? Like donating money or
insurance type stuff. Yeah, and some people still do withholding. They would like to write off stuff they give you. If you are a church, you don't have to file a tax return.
Oh, you don't?
Right.
Oh, so that would be an advantage to being considered a church.
Yes.
Because that's a yearly thing.
Yes, and if you have a flaky board, you'd like to be a church.
Yeah.
So unless you really offend people publicly, you're going to be all right.
Yeah. So if you're a church, from what I understand, it means you can't be real active politically.
Right.
They frown on that.
The Republicans are looking to fix that, so we will watch what happens.
Oh, dear. Okay.
You're not supposed to be paying lobbyists
right.
and stuff. And you can speak for the cause, but not against the evil politician who's opposing you.
Unless you speak as an individual.
Yes.
Not as the corporation.
So there's a two-step.
Right.
And this is the year they're going to try to change that.
Okay.
So we will see.
Yeah.
We will see. With the business with a lawyer, you need to know what you're doing. Accountants know a great deal about taxes and 501(c)(3)s. They tend not to want to bill as much.
Oh, that's good.
And tend to be less predatory.
Oh.
Now, I know some good lawyers. It's not bad mouth all the lawyers.
Right. Well, I do too.
Yes. But if I got a choice of a lawyer or an accountant to talk to, I'd like to talk to an accountant.
Oh, okay.
And accountants have seen this stuff before. So like a coven can go around and decide they are a religious organization because they meet together and they do worship. Mm-hmm. And when you write your words up, when you do a corporation, you do a charter, just like that, and you do your bylaws, and you want to keep that generic.
Yeah, don't get too nitpicky.
Because you're going to walk into a bank, and you don't want to put all your good booga in your charter.
Right.
About how many forks on the staff of the high priestess and stuff. Because it's going to make them nervous when they're sitting there in the bank.
Right.
So you have a president who might also be called a first officer. You have charter and bylaws. Bylaws are subordinate and private. So in the bylaws, you would say the first officer. The president is the first officer.
Right.
And the treasurer is the person, and the secretary is the scribe.
And so the charter would be like your mission statement then.
Yes, and it's public, so anybody can go look it up. So you like it to be as straight as possible.
And pretty.
And pretty.
Yeah.
Just all the kind of words that you'd expect a good Baptist Episcopalian to use. There is no word in our English language for all of the religious organizations. The IRS uses church, while temple, ashram, meeting house, mosque, there are all of these things, and we have no one word for all of them.
So they just call it a church.
But to them, it's a legal term. Some people get crazy at the word church, but it is a legal term, as opposed to people who harmed you in your childhood or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. You're not in your counselor's office now.
Well, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
Basically, you have to. If you're gonna do this, you've got to do it with their legal terms.
Right. So if you're a coven and maybe you want to give your house to the coven's stead and get it off the tax rolls and all that.
That gets a little complicated.
That gets complicated, but you start with an initiation with the 501(c)(3). To get a sales tax exemption, the state asks, did the High Coven initiate you? Mm-hmm. COG has leaped through that. Mm-hmm. Yes. And a religious organization has to do worship.
Right.
You can't be the banker for the coven. All we do is hold money for the area covens and give them back most of it. No, that's not going to get you a sales tax. No.
Well, we did apply for a sales tax exemption. And, in 2005, I think, when we put on Merry Meet in 2006. So, and we still have it. We've kept it up. So it had to be renewed. I think it was every 5 years.
Every 5 years.
So we've renewed it at least twice that I can recall. And, so now we use a P.O. box.
Yes.
Now, can you become a 501(c)(3) and not have a physical church address?
The state of Florida, who runs the corporation, who makes the rules for your corporation, says you must have a physical address.
Okay, so we have you have to have a physical address. So you might as well put your house down.
Somebody's house.
Somebody's house. But you can use a P.O. box to have documents sent to.
One for mail, one for house. Lots of places, lots of businesses have.
Do that.
Here's our office, but the mail goes over there so we don't lose it.
Right.
You want to look like a business. office.
Right. Well, that makes it easy, too, if you're going to take turns getting the mail, so you can pass the key around. So you don't really need a lawyer.
You don't really need, but you do need to know what you're doing.
Well, when you say that, how complicated is it?
You need to know you have to have your 3, 4, 6 officers.
So you need to know their names and their
addresses.
Dates of birth, social security numbers? I mean, how detailed do they get?
For the state of Florida, they want to know the name and address of your officers, and they want to report every year. It says Spelcastor is on the board of Spelcastor org, and here are the other people. And here's your $61.25.
So you mail in the renewal once a year.
For the corporation.
For the corporation. And you just tell them who's on the board, that people are still on the board. And you can change people who are on the board.
Right. It costs money to change, so you don't like to change once a year.
Okay.
And the filing date is May 1st, so you don't like having Coven elections May 15th. It's just messy.
See. Yeah.
It's just messy.
So this May 1st, it's across the board?
No. May 1st is when the deadline for doing this annual report, or they fine you.
Oh,
so you want to do it. You just have your election before then, instead of going into the bank and saying, here we are, and the officers you see on the screen from the state are last year's, but we're the real people, give us the money. Makes the bank nervous.
Oh, I see.
You like to keep it on.
Do you have to have a bank account to be a 501c?
No, but bank accounts really it keeps things honest. A cigar box under the high priestess's bed. A dangerous way to run a coven. Just bad things.
So do you have to get the bank account first, or can you wait until after you get the tax ID number and then open the bank account under that? Because I know I have my Coven fund, but it's under my bank.
Right.
So it uses my social security number.
Right. It's birthing. First you birth the corporation.
I gotcha.
Then it gets a number.
Then you can go to the bank with
now
that.
It's a person with a number, and it can go get a bank account.
Right.
So that's how it works.
And there are still some banks, very few, but still some, that will give you a free business account if you're a nonprofit.
I think credit unions are good at that. They're better at that than the banks. The banks have discovered fees are a great way to make lots of
tell
money.
Me about it.
They used to bank checks. No. Now they make you a payday loan instead.
Yeah, well, our credit union even started monthly fees, so I know. It's small, but I know it's going to go up, so I'm searching.
Yes. So let's see, the disadvantages of these corporations is you can't just say, I'm tired of this and walk away.
Oh, you have
to dissolve it. You have to kill the child.
So you have to dissolve it legally.
Right. Or messy, it might get messy. There's money.
Yeah.
Where'd it go? You told the IRS you were a charity, you had money, you disappeared. Where's the money?
So how would you dissolve it? Give the money
to something else. It has to be a charity.
So you can give the money to another charity.
Right.
Okay.
And then, vote and tell the Secretary of State we're out of business.
You can't just spend it?
Well, you could have a great ceremony, a great final closing ceremony.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yes.
Could you take the entire corporation to the Bahamas on a cruise and spend all the money on your quote unquote annual meeting on the cruise to the Bahamas? That wouldn't work?
The magical phrase, the incantation of the High Coven of the IRS is necessary and ordinary.
Oh, I see.
Is what you're doing.
So that would be extraordinary and unnecessary.
Right.
I gotcha.
Right.
Okay, well,
right.
That's a very good answer.
Right. It's their mantra. It's a mantra.
Yeah. So if you were to set up, say that you did a luncheon for your annual meeting every year and paid for everybody's lunch,
great.
That would be fine.
Fine, yeah. Volunteer appreciation, you might call it.
Right. Or even like we do sometimes with the MLC, we have the camping trip.
Right.
And we pay for the camping spots.
Right.
Well, it's the same thing as renting a hall. You could rent a hall for your meeting. So.
Right. Assets of the charity are not supposed to go benefit an individual.
Right.
You cannot send your daughter to Harvard and donate to the Coven, who will then go pay her tuition.
Aha. Yeah.
But if you do a national scholarship and jump through a lot of hoops and somehow she still won, smell.
Yeah.
Then you can do it.
Yeah, I could see that.
So you can't, it's very hard to do the benefit of an individual unless you've got a lot of filters there to show you're not taking care of your buddies.
So if you wanted to dissolve the 501c, dissolve the corporation, you would have to first either spend the money in a legitimate way
Right.
or donate it to other
Something else.
charities.
Yes.
And then you would notify the government that you were defunct?
You would write the state of Florida and say we're voluntarily dissolving our corporation, and you could write the IRS that we have voluntarily.
Yeah. But since you don't have to file taxes if you're a church.
They won't notice till one day when they start cleaning their books up. And ask, how many of you people are still alive?
Right.
They did that about 5 years ago, and
it
was a mess for a lot of charities who
I bet.
didn't read their mail.
Yeah.
Very
I can bet.
You must read your mail when the IRS writes you, and the state too.
So we're talking just about the state of Florida.
Yes.
But does it work kind of similarly in other states?
It will be similar in other states, because the 5013C, is all federal.
That's
IRS.
That's a U.S. national
Right.
rate.
But as soon as you cross the state line, new rules.
New rules, yeah.
And each state runs its own corporations.
I imagine if you Google, how do I start a 501c in, fill in name of state, you would come up with what you need to do in that state.
The proper Google search would be, how do I start a nonprofit?
A nonprofit.
Not-for-profit corporation.
Ah, okay.
And then the IRS recognizes it. Quack like a duck.
Quack like a duck.
Quack like a duck.
Worship like a church.
Church, yep. Worship like a church. Right. Doesn't matter which way you face as long as you're bowing.
Right. So the advantages are having some legal protection for any events that you're doing. Imagine even if you get event insurance. I know every time we do an event, we have people sign waivers. I've signed 1.5 million waivers in my lifetime. And I can tell you now that every lawyer I've ever talked to has said that waivers are basically not worth the paper they're printed on. But they're just to let people know, hey, we don't have any money, so don't plan on getting hurt and suing us and getting rich because it won't work.
Right. There is a indemnification in the state of Florida for 501c volunteers and staff, not so much the board.
Right.
That anybody can sue anybody anyway, but it's in the statutes that you can't mess with the lady pouring tea.
So if somebody's a volunteer, they're held. They're not held responsible for.
They are supposed to be indemnified. Okay.
Which indemnified means
leave them alone. You can't touch them.
Okay.
But saying not held responsible, bad legal phrase.
I see.
But this is another lawyer thing, because it's who has watched this play through.
Right.
Boards get in more trouble with lawsuits than worker bees. But it helps your worker bees.
Well, I always found that the waiver, to me, the waiver's kind of a reminder to people, be responsible, act like an adult, because we're not going to be your mom, we're not going to pick up after you, and no, we don't have deep pockets.
Right.
So watch out for your own kids, watch out for your own self. But also, I guess, too, if somebody, anybody can sue anybody at any time.
Right.
Over any stupid thing.
Doesn't mean they can win, but they can.
Until a judge throws it out.
Right.
Right. But they didn't throw out McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit, which shocked. I'm probably dating myself with that one, but.
Deep pockets. But other things, like churches are exempt from the ADA. So if you happen to have a neurotic friend with a more neurotic dog who you've offended by not letting him do whatever he likes to do with his dog.
Now, the ADA is the American Disabilities
Act, which is a big deal.
Right.
And a big nuisance. The airlines get lots of so-called service creatures.
Oh, yes.
Right. They've ruled out chickens. You cannot take your service chicken on at least Delta, I think. But anyway, if you're a church, you're exempt from that.
So that means that if you say you use your home as the Covenstead.
Right.
So your home address is the church address.
Right.
So you don't have to put in wheelchair ramps and have wheelchair accessible bathrooms and all of that then.
The bigger you get, the more interesting that question gets. The bigger, because it gets bigger. Because the zoning people will finally start bothering you. Once upon a time, Church of the Iron Oak.
Yes.
Their neighbors got all upset that they were doing church in their own home. And then all the fundies in the area whacked out because they don't like the government anyway. Mm-hmm. And they don't want the government telling them they can't do church in their home.
Well, that's the thing. Most of the time, little branch-off churches they'll start with Bible study on Wednesday nights in somebody's home.
Yeah.
And there's a neighbor we have across the street that, when she was holding Bible study in her house until, I guess they were having renovations done at the church or whatever, and so they didn't have room for it. So she was having it at her house, and literally there'd be 60 cars lined up and down the street. We would not be able to park our camper after we came back from a camping trip until after people would move their cars off the swale. And, we would be polite. We would get home. We'd unpack. We'd just leave it crossways across the driveway. And then we'd have to wait. And then sometimes it'd be 11 o'clock at night before these people would actually leave.
Right. And if you go down to the city council and yell and scream, then they're a nuisance. You're a church, but you're also a nuisance.
Yeah. But we never did that. We knocked on the door and said, hey, do you know the person in the van? Can they just move 10 feet so we can get our camper in and go to bed at a decent hour? And they were always polite about it. I can't imagine that a coven would get quite that big, but you don't know.
It ought to hive. It really ought to hive.
Yeah, they ought to hive.
Just go hive. Stop this.
Yeah, I can't imagine having anybody's schedules lining up that perfectly that you could have that many people more than a few times a year.
Never.
Yeah. No, I remember the whole Iron Oak thing, and it turned into a zoning nightmare for them.
I know.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about, since the corporation is under the rules of the state, you worry about what state you're in.
Uh-huh.
And then you worry about the IRS. Now, if you're international, sometimes you want to pursue the IRS approval. I know Christian charities in Honduras that have the IRS thing because they got donors up here, and they want the donors to get their write-offs.
Well, that is another advantage. If you are a 501(c)(3),
yes,
then other people can donate to you,
yes,
and when you give them a receipt, that's tax deductible for them.
Right.
Now, do you have to track where that money gets spent?
There's an IRS pamphlet on that. If you receive my Rembrandt, the one that I have, and I want to give it to your coven because it looks witchy, and you guys like witchy stuff, and I want to give you my Rembrandt. And I think what you have to do is hang it up in the coven stead for a couple years and not turn around and sell it on eBay the next day.
Right.
You sort of have to use it for your charitable purposes.
Okay.
These are gray areas where you start researching. The IRS has things they call publications, delightful reading.
Yeah.
and
I've read a few of those.
Right. So you pick one on like maintaining your tax status. I mean, those are good numbers to give people who are listening.
Yeah.
There's an IRS publication, 1828, Tax Guide for Churches and Religious Organizations. This one is written for real people and not financial professionals.
Oh, so you can read, you can understand it.
Actually read that thing.
Oh,
yes,
good.
Yes. Then there's another one, publication 557, Tax Exempt Status for Your Organization. And that one is a little drier, but the stuff is in there.
So if you read those, would it help you with filling out the paperwork?
Yes.
Oh, awesome.
Yes. Because you get a feel for what they want.
Right.
Because they will do things like suggest, we would like these words in your charter.
Oh, good.
And then you figure, well, how far can we get from these words? I don't like some of these words.
Right.
And so
paraphrase
you go
a little
look.
bit.
Because the application, like I say, it's an essay question with supporting documents.
Do you know anybody that's ever been turned down?
I think the Tea Party was, and they were horribly upset, remember?
Oh, no, I don't.
The Tea Party, there was a big hoorah in the IRS because the Tea Party wanted to be some kind of 501(c), not a church. And there must have been some liberals in the IRS. I thought it was all Mormons. But anyway, they got turned down, and they took extreme thing, and there was much hoorah and yelling and screaming. So when I put through the coven thing, I did 6 pagans forming a church. They weren't a coven. And that one just sailed right through because it was very vanilla. It's like when you're down at the courthouse, tell them you're reverend.
Right.
Don't say grand wizard. Right. Unless you're in Georgia, then it's okay. They know.
Well, they know what a grand wizard is, but it's not the same thing.
Right, yeah. That's the room down the hall. You don't talk to us.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Oh, dear. But I mean, I find that's why I have ministerial credentials through Covenant of the Goddess, because I find when I go to the hospital and I want to park in the clergy spot and I want to go visit somebody, and it's after visiting hours or before
Right.
visiting hours, because some hospitals, believe it or not, their visiting hours are damned inconvenient.
Yeah.
And then I can use my clergy credential,
Right.
and like you say, you sail right in.
And you show up, you want to look kind of clergy-like.
Well,
You don't look like Gandalf, right?
No. I do not show up. I do not show up in full Wiccan regalia.
Correct.
I keep the jewelry to a minimum.
A minimum. Yeah.
A minimum.
Take the batteries out of the jewelry.
Right. Well, I don't think I have any bling that actually shines, but but since I work in a doctor's office, I will either show up wearing scrubs, because I'm usually coming from work.
Anybody in scrubs is okay.
That works out really well.
I love that.
Or I will dress it in business casual, not jeans, but business casual works too.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have to show up looking the part.
Right.
But fill this out. They don't want to see pictures. They don't need photo IDs or anything, right?
No.
So it really doesn't
You
matter.
are, once you say you're a church, okay, then go act like one and start quiet.
Right. Right. So do they ever follow up, other than the once a year renewal?
Let's see. The state just wants to know who your officers are.
Uh-huh.
The IRS will leave you alone unless you get their attention by doing something flagrant and dreadful.
Oh, yeah.
Like buying Iranian war bonds or something international or whatever.
Right.
You got to do something to get their attention.
Yeah, they have bigger fish to fry.
Much bigger fish.
So it sounds like it's really not that hard.
No.
It just takes a little bit of thought.
It's just regimented. And some of our people are free spirits and they are wonderful, but it's not their strong suit to deal with this stuff.
Right.
So you get your slightly anal covenant and just be nice to them and get them herbal tea and encourage them.
To write this for you.
Right, and answer the questions like this that we started in, and help them with all of that stuff. And that's just good.
Well, Coven history is good.
Yes.
And a mission statement is also good.
Yes.
I think every Covenant organization should know what their mission is. Otherwise, how do you know when you hit it?
Right. And a corporation has a little minute book where they have one annual gathering and other stuff, maybe a financial report. If you've been running an organized coven, you can do this.
Oh yeah, that's not that difficult.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's handy, and you can start searching for these things. Like if you go to sunbiz.org in Florida, you can search corporations. Mm-hmm. So go in and put in Wicca and see what comes out.
Oh, maybe you can copy some of their mission statements.
You can look at or Druid, but they're there.
Yeah.
They get in there.
Because they're public.
It's public.
Ah.
So, and also when you are public, you are showing the world that we are out here. Not everyone is a good Southern Baptist. Not everyone is. So you're on the list just as a little tweak. We're here too.
Yeah, we're here too. Yep.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is. Especially since, more and more county and civic organizations are using prayer prior to their meetings. So, if you find out one of them is, then you can say, knock, knock, I want to lead your prayer.
And they say, who are you? And you say, hi, I've done all of this and this and this.
Right, I'm a member of this nonprofit.
It's good to have a website because everyone expects to find everything online.
Right, exactly.
And it doesn't have to say where you live. Make them work hard to find that out. But it's your purpose and why you're wonderful.
And especially for people who are not a member of, say, Coven of the Goddess, who issue ministerial credentials. Yes. If you're your own 501(c), part of your mission statement could be to issue ministerial credentials.
You don't issue. We ordain.
Ordain ministers.
We don't issue. Ordain now.
It's the right language.
Right. Yes. Yes. We say, duck.
So you ordain ministers.
Right.
And that gives your ministers the right to perform marriages.
Right, because now they're ordained.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And then that's less hoops they have to jump through.
Right.
Especially state to state.
State to state. Each state is different. For instance, in Florida, if you say you're a minister and everyone believes you, life is good. In Virginia, you have to register as clergy once in your life. And I went in there and I took my Covenant of the Goddess forms, and then I told them my name. My title was Reverend because I knew I was in a courthouse, and that they just said fine and stamped it, put it in the book. So you just go in there and look like everyone else.
Right. So you had to do that because you were doing a hand vesting
in Virginia.
Yeah.
So as soon as you cross a state line, you call up the clerk people and ask them the rules, and they know.
Right.
The guys the ladies usually ladies in the marriage office know all this stuff.
Yes, and it's not difficult to get the information.
Right. They'll tell you.
Right.
They'd like you to know, and they think clergy are flakes too, so they want to help you. Like, here, do this. And they really want black ink. You know they want black ink.
Oh, yeah, don't take red, green.
It's gonna
no
be
purple,
bad.
not allowed.
And in Florida, you can't have a high priest and high priestess both do the ceremony. You got to have one celebrant, solemnize the vow.
Oh, you mean you can only have one officiant?
One officiant.
We actually have done weddings where both of us have officiated.
But what the paperwork says.
Well, only one of us signs it.
Right.
Usually the other one can sign underneath, but they only record the one who's on the line.
Right.
Yeah.
The other one can witness or whatever.
Right.
And this happens when the Methodist family and the Presbyterian family show up, each bringing their reverend.
Yes.
Now who gets to sign?
Who gets to sign?
Oh,
yeah.
there goes the reception.
Yeah.
So it's not just us witchy poos that have to deal with it.
This is true. Well, is there any advice that you would give people if they're considering about doing this?
On one hand, if you are signing things for your covenstead and your other friends, it's reassuring to have this structure. If you are going after things like grants and stuff like that, this is helpful.
Oh.
It is helpful for that too. And then just to be visible so that people who crunch the data say, yeah, there's some witches out there. They're there. We see them incorporating, doing weddings and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It just helps them take this more serious. You don't have to go to Deerfield Beach and get the city council to let you do the invocation.
Right, but you can.
You can. You can just see how that works out.
You can try.
You can try. I just think it's good for us to do whatever it takes to be taken more seriously with the rest of the world. That we as clergy should know what the other clergy and other denominations have been through, so we don't give blank stares when they start talking about their background. We look for parallels in our training to what they have done, and we get listed in directories where they turn up and all that.
It helps us to build bridges.
Right. And you want them all to know one witch that wasn't crazy.
At least.
At least.
At least. Well, that's why I show up and look normal.
That's good.
Yeah.
You do that well.
Yeah. Not just because I want to blend. That's part of it, but, you know.
Yeah.
No, I think when we go out into public and we represent Wicca, we are representing all of Wicca to that person, because we may be the only person they've ever met who says, hey, I'm a witch.
Right.
So we're representing every witch everywhere.
And the druids and everyone else, because they can't tell
They
you're
don't know them
different than
apart.
a druid. They know the druids won't speak to witches.
Yeah, well, they can't tell them apart. If you say I'm pagan, they figure everybody's like you.
Right.
So try and act normal.
And the bridges are, they meet one person who they look saying they liked in that other group, and then they're much calmer.
Yes. Yeah, well, bridges are much better, I think. The more people know. That's why I'm out at work and everything, because I figure, the more people that know someone, then that someone's going to say, when someone else they know makes some kind of snide remark or nasty remark, they're going to be saying, well, I work with someone who's Wiccan, and she's not crazy. She's very reliable, and hopefully, they'll say nice things about you.
Yeah. So that's why I encourage everyone, just go incorporate your coven. And it's an education. You will learn a process of bureaucracy. If you then decide to go off and start your own business and do your S corporation, it's similar. It won't be mysterious.
Well, thousands of people have done it.
Yeah.
So it can't be that difficult.
Right. That's what the search is for, when you see how many are out there.
Yeah. And then it'll give you an idea.
Because it's not listed in the Sun Sentinel or the Wall Street Journal.
And the nice thing is it doesn't have to be forever.
Right.
You can do it for a few years, and if you find it's more hassle than you want to deal with anymore, you don't need to anymore because you've retired.
Right. Right. Or you vote other people onto the board and run.
And let them take it.
You got it, guys.
That's true. Yep.
Because corporations are immortal, or can be.
Oh, yeah. That's true. Someone else's issue then. Well, you've given everybody, I think, a lot to think about and some really good information. Thank you so much.
Glad to help. They can look at spellcastor.org for other rantings from me on other topics. And I'm an elder now. I like to sit around and dispense wisdom, and as long as someone's listening, I might have some.
There you go. All righty. Thank you.
Sun comes up, my tent gets warm. The birds are screeching, it's dawn. I'll roll out of bed and strap my boots on, make a naked dash for the portage on. I heat up my coffee, then I pour it on ice. It's just one more day in paradise. I sit with a friend that I just met. I remember her heart, oh, but the name I forget. Well, I honor the sky and I honor the stone. That I found a place where I'm not alone. I drift in the creek and I dance round the flame. Tell me, does this place have a name? Oh, hey, oh, hey. We are transformed by the sun. Oh, hey, oh, hey. And when our work is done, oh, hey, oh, hey. We spiral and we sing. Oh, hey, oh, hey. Pagan spirit gathering. The sun is high and I melt down in this puddle of sweat in this pagan town. Now it's up to my ankles, then it's up to my knees, and the weather collective is chanting breeze, and we all seek shade in the afternoon. Fill our hearts and minds with magic and runes. We eat when we're hungry, we nap when we're tired, so we'll be awake come ritual time. In robes and in nothing, we spiral around, east, north, south, west, central, skyward and ground. We walk with the spirits, we grow with the flow. Tell me, what is this place? I have to know. Oh, hey, oh, hey. We are transformed by the sun. Oh, hey, oh, hey. And when our work is done, oh, hey, oh, hey. We spiral and we sing. Oh, hey, oh, hey. Pagan spirit gathering. We tap our drums if we are shy, and if we're brave, we let them cry. Our spirits soar, we share our light and drift to sleep on this rhythmic night. This is a place where we are not alone and return each year to welcome home. We are transformed by the sun. Oh, hey, oh, hey. And when our work is done, oh, hey, oh, hey. We spiral and we sing. Oh, hey, oh, hey. Pagan spirit gathering. Oh, hey. We are transformed by the sun. Oh, hey, and when our work is done, oh, hey, we spiral and we sing. Oh, hey. Pagan spirit gathering. Pagan spirit gathering. I am home. Pagan spirit gathering. Welcome home. Pagan spirit gathering.
and that was called the PSG song by Mama Gina, and it's on her album, Goddess Kissed. You can learn more about Mama Gina and purchase her music at mamagina.com. That's MAMAGINA.com. And for those of you who are going to Equinox in the Oaks, Mama Gina will be there. And also to let you know, Mama Gina is working on a new CD project featuring Nine Toes the Bard. Go over to her Facebook page or her website and check it out.
Hello everyone. I'd like to say a big thank you to all of the artists and talent who have allowed us to play their music on our podcast. This month we are welcoming a new artist, John Wayne Bradley, whose musical creations can be found at soundcloud.com. Search under John Wayne Bradley, and all his current stuff is there. He specializes in instrumental numbers, and some of them are really, really beautiful. Thank you to John, and thank you to all of the artists that we feature on our program. So I'm going to explore one of the myths of Easter, or Ostara. And I just have to say that I have been told in my tradition, and I have passed on this story to my students as well, of the goddess Eostre and the myth of the bird that fell in love with her, and then when winter came, almost died from the cold. So she turned him into a rabbit. But he so missed being able to lay eggs that she let him lay colored eggs just for her. If you search online for Eostre and the rabbit, you will find several different versions of this story. Eostre is spelled E-O-S-T-R-E. Now, in researching this, I have come to find many sources online who say that this is a modern myth and not old at all. Some say that this was invented by pagans who, quote, like to claim Christian misappropriation of all the pagan holidays, unquote. I have to wonder about the tone of that article. After all, there was misappropriation of pagan holidays, as well as pagan sacred sites. But I will save that rant for another day. I'm not sure what I believe, other than the creation of a new mythology to explain the bizarre egg-laying bunny rabbit doesn't bother me, so long as it's made clear that it is a new myth. I dislike claims that falsify the origins of it, as if it were an ancient myth from a bygone civilization. The days when Wiccans needed to claim lineage dating back to the Stone Age in order to legitimize themselves are hopefully in the past. But in this instance, I don't know who's right and who's wrong, as I have found internet articles supporting both sides. As for the colored eggs aspect, there is a story dating back to the birth of the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. So it is said that on the day that Marcus was born, his mother's hen laid a red-spotted egg. Such an egg was taken as a sign that Marcus would be a great emperor. When he eventually gained the throne, Romans began giving each other colored eggs on important occasions and as a symbol of congratulations. I'm fairly certain that Marcus didn't start the tradition of giving eggs, as there are many recorded customs in various countries where eggs were given as gifts. Sometimes to children, sometimes to clergy, eggs were a common gift and were often given in baskets. Eventually, the eggs became decorated and more extravagant. Eggs have long been a symbol of rebirth and of vitality, and an inexpensive and readily available protein source as well. You have to remember, people didn't eat meat every day like we do now, and so eggs were a great protein source as an alternative to meat, especially when there was maybe no meat available. Rabbits were associated with fertility and wild, abundant sexuality long before the Easter Bunny idea was recorded. Rabbits and eggs are signs of spring, symbols of birth, rebirth, and ongoing life. In most of the northern hemisphere, life is renewing, rising from the death of winter and welcoming the new life of spring. When you look at it that way, Jesus rising from the dead at this time of year makes sense, as he is simply following in a long tradition of gods who rose from the dead, such as Osiris, Adonis, and so forth. So why not have a goddess of the spring and name the holiday after her? Why not have a rabbit that lays colored eggs? Why not invent a myth that involves a loving goddess showing kindness by saving a freezing bird? New stories are written every day, and I like the ones with happy endings. And chocolate candy bunnies. And colored eggs. Happy Ostara!
Hey Moonies, Serona here. I wanted to tell you about my upcoming show. Body and Soul Dance Theater proudly presents Encounters, 35 Years of Dance. It will be held on Saturday, April 22nd at 8 p.m. in the Hollywood Central Performing Arts Center. Body and Soul is the longest running dance company in Broward County. I bet you didn't know that. And we're celebrating our 35th anniversary season. Encounters is funded by the Broward County Cultural Division and recommended by the Cultural Council of Broward County. It will feature choreography spanning our decades-long repertoire, including the more recent Aqua project. Aqua is a unique piece, showing off the talent of our body and soul dancers while underwater, and features music by John Wayne Bradley, which you're listening to a small excerpt right now. Tickets go on sale March 15th, and there will be general admission as well as VIP tickets available. You can check us out at bodyandsouldancetheater.org. Theater is spelled the British way, Theatre. That's bodyandsouldancetheater.org. You can contact us or even sign up for our mailing list, which will send you a friendly reminder when the tickets go on sale March 15th. And on our About page, you can check out video clips from past shows. So come on out and support your local artists. Save the date, April 22nd. I hope to see you there.
Good evening, everyone. Lord Riekin here. I can talk tonight without notes because I'm going to talk about something that's I've done forever. It's spring, and the name of my segment is It's Growing on You. So since there's going to be a plant trade next weekend at Equinox in the Oaks, and since this is the proper time of year for it, we're going to talk about Cuttings 101. Some of the techniques that anyone can use at home to propagate plants. Now, some plants, of course, you can propagate by just splitting pieces off of. Everybody can take a piece off of some aloe and stick it in the ground, and the aloe is perfectly happy with that, and off it'll go. Anything that grows in a cluster like garlic or mondo grass, any of the monkey grasses, you just divide a large clump into smaller clumps. I recently divided my lemongrass from one clump into 6 clumps. Still pretty good size. Cut everything back. Everything's popping back just fine. That's a very spring thing to do. But that's not the main thing I want to talk about. Everybody can figure that one out pretty much. If you have a clumping root system and you can chop chunks off, that's well and good. That's all we really need to say about that. Similar to that, an air layering technique. Some plants air layer themselves naturally. I have a native thyme type of plant out here. It's a native that the lower branches droop to the ground, and where they touch the ground, they root. You can do that to a lot of plants intentionally by forcing them to the ground with a bent piece of wire. Pin them to the ground with some wire, throw a handful of dirt on top of them, keep it moist, go back in 6 weeks and cut them away from the parent stem. You can do that with just about any mint at any time. The way I actually do it with mints is I have a great big overgrown mint. Pieces are going to have come out, drop down, come up, so you've got an elbow in them. I just take some little 2-inch starter pots, fill them half full of dirt, take the stem, stick it in there, put some dirt on it, nestle it down into the parent plant's pot, keep it all watered, flip it off, and away we go. Everybody can do that. But while we're on the subject of mints, we'll go over some of the other things. You can, of course, clip off a lot of the members of the mint family and just stick them in some clean, fresh water and watch them root in a couple of weeks. That's good. Now, there's one problem with that, which is that if the water gets yucky or foul, well, your roots rot off. And the other problem, which you may not be thinking of, is what about using root tone? Well, you don't use root tone on any of the mints. There's lots and lots of plants you don't use root tone on. I'm not going to try to do a list of what you do and don't use root tone on. You can do that research for yourself online. Just be aware that a lot of things you don't want to use root tone powder on because you'll actually inhibit the rooting. Corn plant, you whack off a piece, stick it in the ground. Any other species of Dracaena, you whack off a piece, you stick it in the ground. It roots right out. You dip them in root tone, they're not going to root. You've overkill. A little bit is a good thing, too much is too much. There are a lot of plants that do not need any extra work. Woody plants, different matter. Most woody plants, you can try them with and without some root tone. Now, let's get into what you do with them when you're trying them with and without root tone. The best and easiest way to start a whole lot of cuttings, particularly of things that you don't know for sure exactly what will work best with them, is to take a tray. Pots work too, of course, but if you can take a tray, well, if you're doing a little bit, just take a pot 6 inches high, put it in a bowl that's 1.5 inches high, fill the bowl with water. It absorbs up through the pot, but what you want to put in that pot isn't regular dirt. You just want to put clean white sand, playground sand, sandbox sand. You buy a bag at Home Depot, you bring it home, you prepare yourself some 1-gallon pots in some little bowls, you put the sand in there, you moisten it, and you can start all kinds of cuttings in that. Cuttings that are really fussy about a lot of other things will do just fine in moist sand. The water will wick up through the sand and will maintain it in a moist but not saturated condition. A lot of cuttings you can't make in straight up water because there's not enough oxygen in the water. Now, if you're a mechanically inclined type and you want to take an aquarium bubbler and make yourself a trough where you have aquarium air pumping into it, you can probably root all kinds of stuff because you don't have to worry about it going foul because it lacks air. But the easiest way for most people to do it is to just take clean cut sand in a pot in a shallow bowl, and the sand's moist on top, and you can put all kinds of cuttings in it, and just about everything will root. And of course, just break the sand away. You have the bare rooted plant, and you put it into regular soil when you're done with that. As a nurseryman, I used to root absolute minimum 500 cuttings a day, every day, 9 months out of the year, starting on March 15th, the Ides of March, which is 2 days away. We never ever, here in South Florida, our cutting season starts on March the 15th. Any cuttings done before then, it better be things that are very enthusiastic. Things like hibiscus, vitex, things of that nature that are so-so, you wait till March 15th. From March 15th through June, fantastic time to root just about everything down here. And that holds true with a lot of stuff further north as well, because I know that we're not confined to South Florida here. That's why I'm making my stuff more general, and I'm not really talking about a lot of specific plants so much other than general characteristics. Some plants, most plants I would say, root best from tip cuttings. But those tip cuttings need to be at least 6 inches long because you don't want to be cutting the tender tip and just the tender tip to put into your sand box this way. You want a little bit of woodiness to it. Other plants do best not with the tip cutting, but with the cutting that's one cutting down from the tip. In other words, first 6 inches is your tip, your next 6 inches, you make the cutting, you clip off a couple of lower lateral branches that are on it, you take a knife, you make a little side cut on the last inch or so. Those cuttings you do probably want to put a little bit of root tone powder on and stick them into a sandbox prepared the way we described and get a good rooting on that. Straight up air layering, a lot of plants that don't do well any other way. You take a knife, you scrape the bark and the cambia layer back for 1 inch all the way around, girdling the stem in other words, but very carefully not penetrating into the whitewood underneath. You're cutting through the phloem, you're cutting through the cambia layer, but you're not cutting into the xylem, which is the whitewood, because it is the cambia layer which is going to generate roots once you stimulate it, and the phloem is going to provide the food and energy for that, because you have leaves and branch growing outside of that, and they will keep setting food down as long as the xylem, the whitewood, is sending water and nutrients up. They don't know the throat's been cut yet. And when it gets to where you've made that cut, the cambia layer is going to produce roots, but only if you've made an air layer out of it. Just cutting it clean like that isn't going to do it. You cut it clean, you take some wet peat moss, you put that in a piece of aluminum foil, you apply that to the stem, you wrap it around, you tie it up tight, and then you resist the urge. You make sure it's nice and damp, and then you resist the urge to look for 6 weeks. At the end of 6 weeks, most likely you're going to have good roots. If it's upright enough, you might want to just spray a hose on the stems so that a little bit of water running down the bark might get in there, and make sure you keep it moist. But a lot of plants do particularly well on that. Now, of course, a plant that does well no matter what you do is ficus, but I used to make 12-foot ficus trees in 6 weeks, because you would take a whole 10 or 12-foot branch, do the air layering process, put a big ball on it, and at the end you snip it off, stick it in a pot, and away you go. Quite easy to do, really. This isn't about grafting, this is about cutting. So let's see, we've talked about air layering in a pot or in the ground. We've talked about making woody cuttings using some root tone powder. We've talked about how many things don't need root tone powder. If you don't know, and if you can't find the information online, then just try it on your own. Make tip cuttings. Whenever I was trying a new species of plant that I wasn't familiar with, because this was pre-internet back then, guys. If you didn't have an old nurseryman to teach you something, well, then you just had to figure it out on your own. So I would do trays that had all woody cuttings. I'd do trays that had all tip cuttings. I would do trays that had lateral cuttings. And I found some things only did well with lateral cuttings. Experimentation is your friend. Of course, I had the big advantage of manufacturing mist beds, which aren't hard to do. And if you have the room and the inclination, and you'd like make a little side money, setting yourself up a little mist bed in the backyard doesn't take much electricity, doesn't take much water, has the capability of generating a fair amount of income depending upon what you're doing. I used to make a good deal of money making croton cuttings from the old antique style crotons, not just the Norma Jeans and the Bravos, but the antique fiddle leaf and strap crotons and such. I used to have a mist bed. I could have up to about 2,800 cuttings, I guess, was the capacity in my mist bed, and I would grow nothing but croton cuttings. Tip cuttings didn't need root tone. Second level cuttings did. 3 to the pot. I would make cups of cuttings and sell them for, back then I was getting 60 cents a piece for them. These days you're probably getting a whole lot more. I mean, it's just a few minutes of work at the end of the day, because I was harvesting the cuttings off from all my customers' plants, and they didn't care, and I would sell them to a nursery that specialized in making the antique crotons, and would take it mostly out in trade, so I doubled my money there again. I would trade them good price, and then I would sell the plants and quadruple my price on the plants. So I made out well for growing my own cuttings on that stuff. And I know a lot of people who make a nice backyard income from stuff they can just stick in the ground, like pilea and oyster plant. Down here, the idea that somebody would buy oyster plant, I watched a guy happily coming out of Home Depot with 30 oyster plant, and it's like, dude, you could have come over to my house, I would have given you twice that much. I need to thin the bed out. But a lot of people supplement a retirement income by just growing things that all you have to do is stick them in a pot and water them every third day, and then you sell them to the nurseries or to the landscapers when they're ready to go. It's really not hard. But I'm digressing too much here. I think I've covered the basics of making cuttings. If there's things in your yard you want to make more of, a lot of people really love Sully, the small leaf copperleaf in our backyard, but whether it be the dragon wing copperleaf or Sully or the regular copperleaf or the variegated copperleaf, tip cuttings You're putting them in water, they'll never work. Putting them in the damp sand, they will root out in just 3 weeks. Angel's trumpet, heavier cuttings, no root tone definitely, just like no root tone with any copper leaf. That does well. Vitex, okay, heavier cuttings you could use a little root tone on, but in the spring, if you want tip cuttings of Vitex, no problem there. Used a lot by the Santeria, so you might want to grow some Vitex. Let me know if you want some. I'll root some out. Other things, not so easy. Some things like gardenia you don't want to make from just rooted cuttings because there's no nematode resistance. You need to use grafted stock for something like that. Again, there's thousands of them down here. I can't very well go through all of them. So I think we're done. Lord Riekin signing off. If you have any questions, let me know. Oh, Chaya. I heard there was going to be some Chaya cuttings next weekend. Does not require root tone. Is one of the ones where all you do is stick it in the ground, keep it moist, and it'll root right out for you. Delicious stuff. I used to grow it here, but it grew so much faster than we could eat it that it was taking over everything. So again, Lord Riekin signing off. Have a happy spring. Equinox is a lovely time of year. Happy Ostara.
Hi, everyone. Before we begin our last segment of this episode, we'd like to thank you for listening. Putting a podcast together is a time-consuming labor of love, but knowing that someone is listening to our hard work and hopefully gaining something from it makes it worthwhile. Would you let us know you like the podcast? By going to our website at emlc.net, click on the podcast tab, and write a comment. Tell us what you like and what you'd like to hear more of on our podcast. And even better, why not leave us a rating on iTunes? Ratings help us become more visible to more people. It's not about ego, it's all about service. Thank you, and blessed be.
And we're going to take you out with a song by Emerald Rose, which is called Call Me Home. It's from a couple of their albums, but I think I like the version from Fire in the Head the best. Here you go, and happy Ostara.
I was born in America, I was, and this land has always been a friend to me. But in my soul there is a yearning, an ember fan to burning from a spark that flew from far across the sea. Every year, ever louder grows the song. Every time the pipes of Baron start to play, and in my heart there is a singing ever closer to me, bringing the day and I'll no longer stay away. You called me home, Mother, bring me home. Let me stand on Erin's emerald shore. Let the and fill me with their lore. Let the sacred wells of Cummery flow and cleanse my spirit's core. You call me home, Mother, bring me home. Though I've never stood upon the Mound of Terror or run my fingers on the stones of Salisbury, in my bones there is a thrumming like a secret drone that's humming and calling me into their mysteries. In the dawn, I imagine that I hear them. Ancient tongues, ancient words to an ancient song. And in my mind I dream they found me. The old ones, they circle around me and play a tune that bids me sing along. You call me home, mother, bring me home. Let me stand on Erin's emerald shore. Let the wild winds of Alba blow and fill me with their lore. Let the sacred wells of Cummery flow and cleanse my spirit's core. You call me home, mother, bring me home. You call me home, mother, bring me home. Let me stand on Erin's emerald shore. Let the wild winds of Alba blow and fill me with their lore. Let the sacred wells of Cummery flow, cleanse my spirit's core. You call me home, mother, bring me home. Thank you.